Ladies, let's be real for a second. You want to know why a man who once couldn't get enough of you suddenly becomes cold, distant, and uninterested? It's not because he found someone else. It's because something shifted inside you. And today, I'm exposing the 7 mistakes women make, often without even realizing it, that kill a man's desire instantly. This isn't about blame. This is about power, your power, to attract, inspire, and keep the kind of love that feels like fire, not just convenience. You know when everything starts to change? It's not when he stops texting as much, not when the arguments begin, but when you start trying to prove you're enough. You start matching his energy instead of setting the tone. You start showing him you can play the same games he plays, thinking that's strength. But that's not strength. That's fear dressed up as control. When you compete with a man, you disconnect from him. You stop being his piece and start being his rival. And a man doesn't desire a rival. He desires a woman who reminds him of who he can be, not one who's trying to beat him at his own game. The moment love becomes a scoreboard, attraction dies. Every time you think, he took 3 hours to reply, so I'll take 4, you're not building respect, you're building a wall. You can't make someone crave you by withholding your truth. Men feel that shift instantly. When your warmth turns into calculation, when your softness turns into strategy, you think you're protecting your heart, but all you're really doing is freezing the connection that made him drawn to you in the first place. Men don't fall for women who compete, they fall for women who connect. The ones who can be strong without being hard, confident without being closed, independent without being distant. Because when you start competing, you switch off your feminine energy, the very energy that made him feel alive, inspired, drawn to you. You step into his role and he has nowhere left to lead. He doesn't pull away because he stopped caring. He pulls away because there's no room left for his masculinity next to your defense. You don't win a man's respect by showing you can outdo him. You earn it by showing that you trust yourself enough not to play games. The woman who owns her worth doesn't need to prove anything. She's not chasing power because she already knows she is power. When she walks into a room, she doesn't need to dominate. Her presence speaks louder than her pride. That's the kind of energy that makes a man stay. Not because she competed for him, but because she connected with him so deeply he couldn't imagine disconnecting from her. You know what kills a man's desire faster than anything? When you start giving him everything before he's even earned it. You pour your time, your energy, your attention, your heart, all into someone who's still deciding if he even wants to show up for you. You think you're showing love, but what you're really showing is fear. Fear that if you don't give enough, he'll leave. Fear that if you don't prove your worth, he won't see it. But here's the truth. The more you chase, the faster he runs. The more you give without boundaries, the less he values what he's receiving. A man doesn't fall for a woman because she gives him everything. He falls for the woman who makes him want to give to her. When you overgive, you rob him of the chance to invest. You make it too easy, too fast, and the chase, that natural tension that fuels attraction, disappears. You become predictable, always available, always there, and while you're busy trying to make him happy, he's quietly losing respect, not because you are unworthy, but because you're no longer a challenge to his spirit. Desire needs space. It needs the unknown. When you fill every silence, when you fix every problem, when you anticipate every need, you leave no room for him to step in. You teach him that your love will always be there no matter how little he contributes. And soon he stops trying. Not out of cruelty, but because you've trained him not to. He knows you'll carry it all. And once that dynamic sets in, desire fades. Because no man craves what he doesn't have to earn. You think giving everything will make him see your value, but real value never needs to scream. Real value holds itself back with grace. It waits, it observes, it allows effort to be matched, not assumed. A high-value woman knows that giving too soon is a form of self-betrayal. She doesn't rush to prove. She allows herself to be pursued. Because when a man feels he's earned your time, your body, your energy, he cherishes it differently. What's given freely is forgotten. What's earned is remembered forever. You know what breaks a man's desire without him even realizing it? When you start pretending to be okay with things you're not okay with. When you hide your standards just to seem easygoing, chill, low maintenance. You think you're keeping the peace, but what you're really doing is teaching him that your boundaries are flexible, that your needs are negotiable, that your heart doesn't need to be considered. You silence your truth to stay close to him. And in doing that, you drift further from yourself. You tell yourself you don't want to scare him away, so you agree to what feels wrong. You act like you're fine with casual when your soul is craving commitment. You nod, you smile, you say it's cool, when deep down you're breaking a little every time you minimize what you actually want. But here's what you don't realize. A man can sense when a woman's energy no longer matches her words. He feels the quiet resentment, the forced calm, the way your eyes dim just a little each time you swallow your truth. And when he feels that disconnect, his desire fades. Not because you're not enough, but because the authenticity that once drew him in has vanished behind your need to be liked. A woman who hides her standards doesn't come across as easygoing. She comes across as uncertain, and uncertainty kills attraction. Men respect what's clear. They respect what's consistent. They respect a woman who can look them in the eye and say, "This is what I want, and I'm not afraid to lose you for it." That kind of honesty doesn't push the right man away. It magnetizes him because truth is rare, and confidence in that truth is even rarer. Every time you shrink your standards to fit someone else's comfort, you tell the universe you're willing to settle. And the universe keeps sending you people who confirm that. But the moment you stand firm, when you stop pretending and start owning what you desire, everything changes. The wrong men leave fast and the right man rises to meet you. A man doesn't stay because you bend for him. He stays because you stand tall enough to remind him what integrity looks like. You know when a man starts losing interest? It's not always because of what you did wrong. Sometimes it's because you stopped being the woman he first met. The woman who had light in her eyes, who laughed without holding back, who had her own plans, her own rhythm, her own mystery. Somewhere along the way, you made him your world, and in doing that, you lost the spark that made him want to be part of it. You stopped dressing up for yourself, stopped chasing your passions, stopped feeding your own life, and slowly, the version of you that once inspired him disappeared. When he first met you, you were a whole experience, unpredictable, full of energy, full of movement. He didn't just fall for your beauty, he fell for your essence. But then you started living for him instead of with him. You began seeking his validation instead of living from your vibration. You made him the center, and in doing so, you forgot that your power was never meant to orbit around anyone. The woman he fell for wasn't trying to please him. She was pleasing herself, and that radiance was what pulled him in. Men crave the woman who keeps evolve, who surprises them, who stays curious about life. When you stop growing, he stops chasing because the energy that once intrigued him has gone still. It's not that he doesn't care. It's that he no longer recognizes the woman who once made him feel alive. You can't hold a man's desire by pausing your life to fit into his. You hold it by continuing to be the woman who lights up her own world. When you lose yourself, everything starts to feel heavy. Conversations become routine, connection becomes maintenance, and passion turns into habit. But when you return to yourself, when you start showing up again for your dreams, your body, your happiness, he feels that shift instantly. Because feminine energy isn't loud, it's magnetic. It pulls without effort, and the moment you stop needing him to define you, he feels drawn to rediscover you. The woman who keeps a man's desire isn't the one who revolves around him. She's the one who never stopped revolving around her own light. You know what kills a man's desire without you even realizing it? It's when you start trying to fix him. When you see his potential and decide it's your mission to bring it out. You start advising, correcting, guiding, thinking you're helping, but slowly you're taking away his power to lead. You become the one who manages his emotions, solves his problems, and holds his hand through every mistake. And in doing that, you stop being his woman and start becoming his coach, his mother, his therapist. You think you're nurturing him, but to him, it feels like control. A man doesn't desire a woman who constantly tells him who he should be. He desires a woman who believes he can figure it out. When you step into the role of fixing, you send a silent message that he's not enough as he is. And that message cuts deeper than you think. He starts doubting himself around you. He stops making decisions. He stops leading, and before long, he withdraws. Not because he doesn't love you, but because he no longer feels like a man in your presence. Men crave respect more than they crave reassurance. They crave the space to grow, to fail, to rise again, without being judged, analyzed, or managed. When you constantly step in to correct him, you rob him of that process. You take away his sense of accomplishment, his sense of pride. You may think you're showing love, but to him, it feels like he's living under a microscope. And no man can feel desire under constant observation. The most powerful thing you can give a man is trust. Trust that he'll find his way. Trust that he'll handle what life throws at him. Trust that he doesn't need saving to be worthy of love. That trust awakens something inside him. It makes him want to rise, to lead, to become better, not because you demanded it, but because you believed in him. When a man feels that kind of faith from a woman, it ignites his drive, because nothing inspires a man more than being seen as capable, strong, and enough. And nothing kills his desire faster than feeling like a project instead of a partner. You know what slowly destroys the connection between you and a man? It's not the arguments, not even the silence. It's when you talk endlessly but stop truly expressing yourself. You tell him everything that's wrong, but nothing that's real. You complain about what he's not doing. You list all the ways he's fallen short, but you never let him feel what's actually happening inside you. You speak from your frustration, not your truth. You talk to be heard, not to be understood. And over time, he stops listening. Not because he doesn't care, but because your words no longer carry emotion, only noise. A man can't connect to your logic. He connects to your feeling. He doesn't fall for the details of what happened. He falls for the emotion underneath it. When you say, "You never make time for me," he hears criticism. But when you say, "I miss feeling close to you," he hears your heart. The first makes him defensive. The SC. Con draws him closer. The difference is energy. One attacks, the other invites. And most women don't realize how often they speak from fear instead of feeling. Fear of being ignored, fear of being too much,